In the stillness between heartbeats, in the spaces where words dissolve and only breath remains, there lies a yearning so deep, so ancient, that it escapes the grasp of intellect. It is not a desire shaped by the world or stirred by external temptation. It is older than name, older than form. It is the soul's cry to return to its source, and this cry, though silent to human ears, echoes mightily in the unseen realms. It is not always uttered aloud, not even always consciously felt. Yet in the depth of solitude, when the distractions of the outer world fade, that yearning begins to rise. Like mist from a hidden valley, it ascends through the soul's ravines and peaks, searching, seeking, straining upward towards something that cannot be contained in matter or measured in time. There are moments in life, sharp or gentle, when this longing pierces the veil. It may come in the darkness of night when sleep avoids the weary, or in the light of day when joy feels thin and artificial. It may arrive as tears that fall for reasons unknown, or as a tightness in the chest that no doctor can diagnose. But it is real, and it is calling. This is the beginning of the prayer, not a crafted speech, not a formula, but a turning. A reorientation, an inward pulling, a glance of the heart toward its beloved. No training is required to feel this, no qualification. It is in the child who prays without knowing why. It is in the elder who no longer remembers words, but still hums the name. It is in the one who never knew ritual, never touched a holy book, but now, standing under the vastness of a night sky, feels utterly known, utterly small, and utterly seen. That moment, when the heart bends and softens, when the soul whispers even without sound, that is the prayer. The one that matters, the one that changes everything, and though the world may not notice it, though it makes no noise, though no crowd gathers to applaud it, this prayer begins a revolution not of empires or economies, but of states of being. The soul begins to thaw, it begins to awaken, it begins to remember. This is not about eloquence or posture or ritual perfection. This is about presence, about sincerity, about truth, the kind of truth that can't be spoken, only known. The kind of truth that strips away pretense and leaves the heart naked before its creator. There is no bargaining here, no performance, only a raw plea, I am here, you are there, draw me close, and this is a strange kind of closeness. Not physical, not even emotional in the way we understand it. It is the kind of closeness that undoes distance, not by crossing space, but by dissolving separation. Where once the soul wandered, it now begins to dwell. Where once it sought outside, it begins to find within. And this, too, is a mystery, for the one it seeks is not confined by any direction, not contained by any image. Yet the soul knows when it is near. It recognizes the fragrance, it feels the warmth, and so the prayer continues, not as a moment, but as a state, not as a line recited, but as a breath taken with awareness. Every heartbeat, a chant, every blink, a remembrance. The prayer begins to weave itself into the very fabric of one's existence, not loud, not showy, but constant, gentle, insistent. This is where transformation begins, not with grand gestures, but with this soft, unseen turning. Again and again, turning toward, turning inward, turning upward, not because it has answers, but because it has yearning, and that yearning is the most sacred thing a soul can hold, for it is proof, not of distance, but of connection. A connection so deep that even longing is a form of nearness. In this state, silence becomes eloquent, stillness becomes powerful, and what once felt like emptiness becomes full, full of presence, full of knowing, full of peace that cannot be explained. And though the outward life may look unchanged within, the ground has shifted, a new axis has formed, one that does not wobble with the changing winds of fate or fear. Here, in this prayer, the soul finds its anchor, not in what it asks for, but in the one it asks, not in what it receives, but in the presence it seeks. And slowly, without fanfare, without drama, the soul begins to rise, not above the world, but within it, not away from life, but deeper into it. And this rise, in quiet, certain, unseen, becomes the most important journey it will ever take. There exists a conflict so persistent, so intimate, that most live within it without ever naming it. It is the war between the inner and outer self, a silent battlefield stretching from the chambers of the heart to the surface of the skin. On the outside, roles must be played, masks must be worn, expectations must be met. The eyes of others, imagined or real, weigh heavily on every choice. Appearances must be kept intact, words must be measured, smiles must be presented even when the soul trembles, and so the outer self grows skilled, polished, composed, competent. It learns the languages of success, status, and social survival. But within, another story unfolds, a story that cannot be seen in photographs or captured in compliments. The inner self is raw, fluid, searching. It does not always align with the version presented to the world. In fact, often it rebels. It cries out in moments of falsehood, recoils in the face of praise that feels undeserved, aches when attention is mistaken for love. And this is the source of the war, a dissonance between how one appears and who one is becoming, between what is demanded and what is true. This war is not loud, but it is consuming. It eats away at peace. It turns quiet moments into battlegrounds. It leaves a person lying in bed, eyes open in the dark, wondering if they are living their life or someone else's version of it. The outer self may achieve much wealth, admiration, influence, while the inner self withers in neglect, unheard, untouched by anything real. And slowly the distance grows, the person splits, they become two, one visible and thriving, the other hidden and starving. But prayer begins to reverse this, not the prayer that asks for more of the world, but the prayer that asks to be made whole. That prayer doesn't concern itself with appearances. It's not offered to impress or to fulfill obligation. It is a call from the deepest part of the inner self, finally brave enough to speak, and when that call is made, when the heart dares to cry in truth, a shift begins. In that moment, something powerful occurs. The inner self begins to step forward. It does not shout, it does not boast, but its presence is undeniable. It begins to reclaim ground, not by force, but by truth. The outer self, so long in control, starts to soften. It begins to listen. It starts to recognize the strength of quiet sincerity over performance. And in this merging, the war begins to quiet, but the battle is not easily won. There are days when the outer self returns to old habits, seeking validation, fearing rejection, wearing the armor of pretense. But now, the inner self has a voice. It has been awakened by prayer, and it does not easily return to silence. It reminds, it resists, it grieves the loss of authenticity, and slowly it starts to shape the outer self, not in rebellion, but in reconciliation. This is where the struggle becomes sacred. The contradictions, the confusion, the pull between two realities, it all becomes part of the journey. Not to destroy the outer self, but to align it, to allow it to reflect the truth within. This takes time, it takes humility, it takes the willingness to be seen differently, to be misunderstood, to walk away from applause, to face the emptiness left when false affirmations are no longer enough. But as this alignment grows, so too does freedom. The soul begins to move through life with less fear, not because the world has changed, but because the self has become integrated. Prayer becomes not just an act of devotion, but a weapon of truth. Each word, each breath cuts through illusion. It binds the inner and outer self together in a sacred covenant. No more division, no more pretending. And from this place, true strength is born, not the strength to dominate or to dazzle, but the strength to stand honest in a world addicted to image, the strength to speak with a voice that has been purified by silence, to act with a heart that has faced itself and not turned away. This is the strength that prayer cultivates, the kind that cannot be bought, imitated, or taken away. This war, unseen by most, unfought by many, is where the soul is forged. And when fought with sincerity, It does not end in defeat, but in union, in the merging of who we are and who we appear to be, in the birth of a self that needs no mask because it has found its home in truth. There is a secret hidden in plain sight, one often neglected in the spiritual path, yet it holds immense power. It is the tongue, a small piece of flesh seemingly insignificant, but it is the gatekeeper of the heart and the revealer of what lies within. The tongue is not just a tool for speech, it is a mirror of the soul, a compass of intention, a weapon of light or darkness. In its motion lies either destruction or salvation. And in surrendering it, in disciplining it, in purifying it, one finds a doorway to a transformation more profound than any outward act of devotion. The tongue has the power to build or break. With it, people are elevated, and with it, they are humiliated. With it, love is spoken, and with it, trust is shattered. But beyond the realm of others, it is the tongue's role in shaping the inner world that matters most. What the tongue utters, the heart repeats. What the heart repeats, the soul absorbs. And so, each careless word, each lie, each complaint, each burst of anger is not just a sound that vanishes into the air, it is an imprint, a weight, a direction. The sacredness of prayer begins with the tongue, not in grand orations or rehearsed phrases, but in truth, in control, in choosing silence over harm and meaning over vanity. The one who learns to guard the tongue guards the heart. And the one who guards the heart is invited into divine presence. This is why surrendering the tongue is not weakness, it is strength, the kind of strength that restrains itself when provoked, the kind that holds back when slander whispers, when sarcasm tempts, when gossip tastes sweet. It is not easy. The tongue moves faster than the mind. It reacts before the soul has a chance to intervene. But here is where the journey begins, when one makes a covenant with the tongue, a silent vow, to speak only what brings life, what brings light, what brings truth. To recite not the noise of the world, but the remembrance of the one who made the world. This is where prayer moves from ritual to reality, when the tongue becomes an instrument of hikr, of remembrance, of calling upon the one who never forgets. Each utterance of the divine name, each whispered invocation, is a drop of water on a thirsty land. Slowly, the desert of the soul begins to bloom. Slowly, the chaotic noise within begins to soften. It does not require a perfect voice, nor fluent words, nor eloquent expressions. What it requires is sincerity, presence, intention, that the tongue is no longer loose, no longer idle, but submitted, given back to the one who gave it. And so the prayer begins, perhaps awkward at first. A few stuttering words in the silence, a half-formed plea, but with each repetition, something shifts. The tongue begins to taste the sweetness of sincerity. The soul begins to align with the sound it hears. The remembrance begins to echo beyond the lips, reaching deeper into the heart, into the veins, into the marrow. The entire being begins to remember. This surrender is not passive, it is active vigilance. It means walking away from conversations that darken the soul. It means resisting the urge to have the last word. It means catching the word before it leaves, examining it, and asking, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? And when it is not, choosing silence instead. This silence is not empty, it is full of awareness, full of presence, full of longing, because the one who restrains the tongue is not just avoiding sin. They are preparing the vessel for sacred speech, for words that lift, that heal, that carry light, for prayers that penetrate veils, for invocations that reach where hands cannot. The tongue becomes not a source of distraction, but a tool of return, a constant companion on the path back to the divine, and in this, a deep peace begins to form, not because life is easy, but because the self is aligned, the noise within decreases, the heart finds clarity, and the soul begins to hear the echoes of the names it once forgot. The tongue that once wandered in heedlessness now becomes a guide, a lantern in the dark, a stream that flows gently but surely toward the source. There are prayers that rise like fire, full of desperation, urgency, and longing. There are prayers whispered in brokenness, offered not in strength but in surrender. And yet, after such prayers, silence often follows. Days pass, then weeks, and sometimes years. The one who prayed begins to wonder, was I heard? Did anything reach beyond the ceiling? Was my voice too soft, my words too clumsy, my heart too distant? But what the soul must come to know, deeply, patiently, faithfully, is that the response to a prayer does not always arrive in the form or timing one expects. There is a mystery in the unfolding. A rhythm known only to the one who sees the full arc of time, the hidden cracks of the heart, the consequences layered behind every request. The delay is not denial. The silence is not absence. It is arrangement. It is mercy. It is a crafting of something better than what was imagined. This is where the real trial begins, not in the act of prayer itself, but in the space after, in the waiting, in the trusting, in the letting go, because to ask is human, but to wait with faith is sacred. The unseen answer often begins to take form quietly, in places the eye cannot detect. Sometimes it comes in the shift of a thought, the softening of a wound, the sudden clarity in confusion. Other times it is more hidden, an obstacle appearing that protects from future harm, a heartbreak that saves from ruin, a delay that leads to alignment. To the impatient heart, these answers feel like silence. To the wise heart, they are whispers of divine precision. Prayer is not a transaction. It is a submission, a declaration that I do not know, but you do. I cannot control, but you can. I am bound by time, but you are beyond it. And when this submission is real, when the heart lets go of its tight grip on expectation, then peace enters, a peace not dependent on outcomes, a peace rooted in trust. This does not mean one stops yearning. It means the yearning is purified, no longer desperate for a specific result, but open to what is best. The prayer mat becomes not a place of requests, but of release. Each supplication, each breath becomes an offering. If this is good for me, bring it close. If not, turn my heart away, and in this offering, the soul finds rest. There is a quiet unfolding always taking place, beyond the veil of perception, within the orchestration of days. The right people cross paths, the right words are spoken, the right door closes so that another, better one might open. These are not coincidences. These are the subtle answers, the ones not announced, but gently given. The ones missed by those who rush, but seen by those who reflect. Often, one only understands in hindsight. Looking back, the prayer that seemed ignored was actually being answered in the most merciful way. The path that once felt like a detour was in fact the main road. The waiting was not wasted. It was a preparation, and the silence, it was filled with unseen movement. The one who hears is never inattentive. But he responds as a master craftsman, not a merchant. He does not simply give, he shapes, he prepares, he builds around and within, and sometimes the prayer is answered not in what arrives, but in what leaves. The fear that fades, the bitterness that dissolves, the need for control that loosens its grip. To recognize this is to live in a different state, no longer demanding, but observing, watching how life unfolds, not with anxiety, but with awe. Trusting that what is meant will reach, even if the path to it is winding and slow. Trusting that what does not arrive was never meant to anchor the soul, and so the prayer continues, not just in words, but in the posture of the heart. A quiet, steady surrender, a sacred patience, and in this space the unseen answers begin to arrive, not always as we imagined, but always as we needed. There is a force more powerful than willpower, more enduring than emotion, more transformative than sudden inspiration. It is remembrance, not as a fleeting moment, but as a persistent state, not as repetition for ritual's sake, but as a deliberate turning of the heart, again and again, back to the source. This remembrance is the secret of the soul's awakening. It is the steady drip that hollows stone, the hidden root that nourishes the tree, the silent rhythm that reshapes the heart from within. At first, it may feel mechanical, a name repeated, a phrase murmured. The mind drifts, the heart feels dry, but even then, something is happening. The act itself is a defiance against forgetfulness, against distraction, against the noise that fills the soul's ears but leaves it deaf. Persistent remembrance is a choice, not because it always feels spiritual, but because the one who remembers knows that this is where light enters. This is how the veils thin. In a world addicted to stimulation and novelty, persistence is rare. People want results, reactions, emotional highs. But remembrance does not work this way. It is not a spark. It is a flame that must be guarded, fed, and protected. One day the heart responds, the next day it feels silent. Yet still, the one who knows continues, because remembrance is not about how it feels. It is about what it does. It reorders the soul. It disciplines the tongue. It purifies intention. The same phrase repeated with sincerity begins to clean the heart like water over glass. Over time, the stains of arrogance, envy, fear, and heedlessness begin to fade. They may not vanish overnight, but they lose their grip. They begin to weaken, and in their place, something deeper grows: awareness, presence, humility, longing. The one who remembers persistently begins to walk differently, not with pride, but with purpose. They begin to speak differently, not with noise, but with weight. They begin to choose differently, not with impulse, but with clarity. Because remembrance softens the self, and a softened self is fertile ground for guidance. This transformation does not announce itself. It is subtle, a reaction held back, a kindness given without recognition, a tear shed in a moment of connection. These are the signs, not visions or voices, but a heart more aligned, more aware of its smallness and its nearness to the one who is never far. Persistent remembrance also breaks the illusion of separation. In moments of anxiety, it pulls the soul back into presence. In moments of joy, it grounds the soul in gratitude. It teaches that the goal is not to escape the world, but to remember within it, to sit in a crowded room and still be inwardly connected, to walk through the chaos and still carry stillness. And the more one remembers, the more one begins to crave that remembrance. What once felt like an obligation now feels like oxygen. What once was forced now becomes familiar. The name that once felt distant now feels like home, and this is the miracle. Not that life becomes easier, but that the self becomes stronger, more centered, more real. Remembrance also begins to illuminate what is false. The soul becomes sensitive. Certain speech, certain company, certain distractions begin to feel heavy, unnatural. The one who remembers begins to choose differently, not from judgment, but from protection. Protecting the space in the heart that remembrance has opened, protecting the clarity it has nurtured. Over time, remembrance becomes identity, not a practice performed at intervals, but a presence that remains through all moments. It is there in movement and stillness, in speech and silence, in solitude and in company. It becomes a lens through which life is seen, a compass through which decisions are made, a light that flickers steadily even in the deepest darkness. This transformation is not dramatic, but it is undeniable. The one who remembers persistently may still struggle, may still fall, but they rise faster, they return quicker, they know where to turn, because remembrance does not eliminate the storm, but it anchors the soul within it. And so the prayer never truly ends. It continues in breath, in thought, in intention. The lips may fall silent, but the heart remembers, and the one who remembers persistently walks not alone, but in the quiet company of the one who promised, "Remember me, and I will remember you."